Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the planet burn. The orange flames covered New Montana like a blanket of death, eating everything that humans had built over 30 years. 3 million people lived on that world yesterday. Now they were all ash floating in space. "Sir, we are getting the final transmission from the surface," said Lieutenant Ryan Walsh from his station. His voice was quiet and tight with anger. Jake nodded, but did not take his eyes off the burning world. The Zephyrian ships hung in orbit like metal vultures, their blue hulls gleaming in the light of the dying planet. They had done this 15 times before to human worlds, and each time the Galactic Council did nothing but send messages of concern. "Put it on speaker," Jake said. The voice that came through was broken and full of static. "This is Colonel Pete Davis from New Montana Defense. Force, the cities are gone. The farms are gone. My family is gone. They used plasma bombs on the schools first. The children never had a chance. Tell Earth that we tried to fight. Tell them that the Zephyrians laughed when we asked for mercy. Tell them that we died as humans, not as slaves." The transmission ended with the sound of explosions and screaming that cut off suddenly. Jake closed his eyes and felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not fear or sadness anymore. Those feelings had died with the first human world that burned. This was something else, something that had been growing for years as humanity watched their people die while the galaxy did nothing. On Luna Station, Admiral Lisa Harper received the casualty reports in her command center. The numbers glowed red on her screen like drops of blood. 3,200,612 confirmed dead. 0 survivors found. Total destruction of all surface installations. The planet was now uninhabitable for human life. "Admiral, we have Counselor Vextar of the Altarian Federation on the communication channel," said Commander Susan Lee. "He wants to discuss the incident." Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "The incident? That is what he calls the murder of 3 million humans." She activated the channel, and the blue face of the Altarian counselor appeared on the screen. His large black eyes showed no emotion as he spoke in his cold, mechanical voice. "Admiral, Harper, the Altarian Federation wishes to express its concern over the recent events at New Montana. We hope that humanity will not take any rash actions that might destabilize the region." "Rash actions," Lisa repeated slowly. "Like defending ourselves when aliens burn our worlds. The Zephyrian Collective was within their rights under Galactic Law Section 447. New Montana was in violation of agricultural restrictions in that sector. The response was proportional under the guidelines." Lisa felt her hands shake with rage. "Proportional? You call genocide proportional to growing too much wheat. Humanity remains a junior species in the galactic community. Your expansion rights are limited by the Council. The Zephyrians were enforcing a legal mandate. I suggest you file a formal complaint through proper channels if you disagree with their methods." The transmission ended, leaving Lisa staring at a blank screen. She had been having these conversations for 10 years as humanity's military leader. Always the same words, always the same excuses, always the same message that human lives did not matter to the galaxy. Dr. Samuel Brooks was working late in his laboratory on Earth when the news reached him. As head of human xenobiological research, he had studied every known alien species for 20 years. He knew their strengths and their weaknesses better than any human alive. He also knew something that the Galactic Council did not suspect. Samuel accessed his private files and pulled up the intercepted communications he had decoded 3 months ago. The messages were between high-ranking officials from 6 different alien governments. They talked about humanity like scientists discussing lab rats. The attacks on human worlds were not random acts of aggression. They were carefully planned tests. The aliens wanted to study human responses to stress and loss. They wanted to see how much punishment humanity could take before they broke. They were using human suffering as data for their research into controlling other species. Worse, they were planning something bigger. The final message in the files made Samuel's blood run cold. Phase 3 will commence with the elimination of the source. Earth must burn to complete the study of human psychological breaking points. Recommend total sterilization to prevent contamination of results. Samuel sat back in his chair and stared at the words on his screen. The galaxy was not just ignoring human suffering. They were causing it on purpose, and they planned to finish by destroying Earth itself. He reached for his communication device and began typing a message to Admiral Harper. It was time for humanity to stop being the galaxy's victims. On the surface of New Montana, Marine Sergeant Kelly Davis crawled through the ruins of what had been the capital city. Her armor was cracked and her oxygen was running low, but she kept moving. There had to be survivors somewhere in this wasteland of twisted metal and burning rock. She found them in the basement of a school that had partially collapsed. 12 children, ages 5 to 10, huddled together in the dark. Their teacher, a young woman named Beth Connor, had shielded them with her own body when the ceiling came down. She was dead, but the children were alive. Kelly activated her emergency beacon and called for pickup. As she waited with the frightened children, she looked up through the hole in the ceiling at the Zephyrian ships still hanging in orbit. They were taking pictures of the destruction they had caused, documenting their success like tourists at a monument. "Are the bad aliens gone?" asked a little girl with burns on her face. Kelly knelt down and took the child's hand. "Not yet, sweetheart, but they will be. I promise you that they will be." She meant those words with every fiber of her being. As she held the last survivors of New Montana, Kelly Davis made a promise that would change the galaxy forever. President Nathan Cross stood before the United Earth Assembly as representatives from every nation filled the Great Hall. The emergency session had been called within hours of receiving Dr. Samuel Brooks' intercepted communications. For the first time in human history, there were no empty seats and no absent delegates. The revelation that Earth itself was targeted for destruction had united humanity like nothing ever had before. "My fellow humans," Nathan began, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed assembly, "we have spent 50 years trying to earn our place in the galactic community through diplomacy and patience. We have followed their laws, respected their customs, and accepted their judgment, even when it meant watching our people die. Today, we learned the truth about what our patience has earned us." He activated the main display, showing the intercepted alien communications that Samuel had decoded. The assembly fell silent as they read the cold, clinical discussions about using human suffering as research data. When the final message about Earth's planned destruction appeared, angry voices erupted from every section of the hall. "They see us as animals to be studied and then eliminated," Nathan continued when the noise died down. "They have been planning our extinction while we begged them for recognition as equals. The time for diplomacy is over. The time for patience is over. Today, humanity chooses a different path." The vote was swift and unanimous. Resolution 2387 passed without a single dissenting voice. The United Earth withdrew from all galactic treaties, accords, and agreements effective immediately. Humanity would no longer be bound by laws written by species that planned their destruction. Director Alex Turner had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. As head of the Human Defense Initiative, he had quietly prepared for the day when humanity would need to stand alone against the galaxy. The Phoenix Protocol was his greatest achievement, a network of hidden research facilities scattered across human space, all working on projects that violated dozens of galactic conventions. "Activate all Phoenix sites," Alex ordered from his command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. "Authorization Alpha 77 Black, full operational status immediately." Across human space, facilities that had been disguised as mining operations and agricultural stations suddenly revealed their true purpose. On Titan, Dr. Rachel Coleman emerged from her laboratory carrying the prototype for a weapon that could sterilize entire star systems. On Europa, Dr. Kevin Harris finished the final calculations for a hyperspace interdiction field that could trap enemy fleets and destroy them at leisure. The aliens had spent decades studying human psychology and biology, but they had missed something crucial about human nature. Humans were not just adaptable, they were vengeful. Every attack on a human world had been carefully documented. Every alien involved had been identified. Every weakness in their technology and biology had been cataloged and studied. Intelligence operative Maria Santos received her new assignment while she was still undercover on the Zephyrian homeworld. Her cover as a trade representative had given her access to military installations for 3 years. She had memorized fleet movements, weapons capabilities, and defensive positions, while the Zephyrians treated her like a harmless human pet. The message from Earth was simple and direct. Phoenix activated. Execute Order 7. Extract immediately after completion. Maria smiled as she read the orders. Order 7 was something she had hoped to receive for years. She moved through the Zephyrian capital city toward her target, a massive communications array that coordinated their military operations across 6 sectors. The device in her briefcase was smaller than a book, but contained enough antimatter to level several city blocks. She planted the bomb in the central processing core and activated the timer. 12 hours from now, the Zephyrian military would lose coordination across their entire fleet network. It would be the first of many gifts that humanity planned to give their enemies. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders while the Defiance was still orbiting the ruins of New Montana. The message came directly from Admiral Harper with the highest priority encryption. As he read the contents, Jake felt his pulse quicken with anticipation. All ships return to Luna Station immediately for retrofit and new equipment installation. Project Nemesis is now active. Prepare for extended combat operations against hostile alien forces. No prisoners, no mercy, no quarter given. The Defiance and her escort ships turned away from New Montana's burning corpse and jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, automated beacons began broadcasting a message in every galactic language. This world died because aliens chose to murder humans. Remember this when humanity comes for you. Luna Station had transformed overnight from a peaceful naval base into a massive war factory. Ships arrived hourly to receive new weapons and equipment that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The weapons were brutal and efficient, designed by scientists who had studied alien biology for decades and knew exactly how to cause maximum damage to each species. Lieutenant Ryan Walsh supervised the installation of new torpedo systems on the Defiance. The weapons looked like standard photon torpedoes, but their warheads contained something far more deadly. Each torpedo was loaded with tailored biological agents that would be lethal to specific alien species while remaining harmless to humans. Sir, these weapons violate the Biological Warfare Convention of 23A7, Ryan said as he reviewed the specifications. Jake looked at his tactical officer with eyes that had grown cold over the years of watching human worlds burn. We withdrew from that treaty yesterday, Lieutenant. We are no longer bound by agreements made with species that want us dead. Engineer Commander Susan Lee was working on modifications to the Defiance's engines when she discovered what they were really being asked to do. The new drive systems would allow the ship to travel at speeds that were theoretically impossible. More importantly, they would allow the ship to ram enemy vessels at relativistic velocities, turning the entire ship into a kinetic weapon that could destroy anything in its path. Captain, these modifications will make the ship incredibly dangerous to operate, Susan reported. One miscalculation, and we could tear a hole in space-time itself. Good, Jake replied. The aliens think humans are weak because we follow rules and care about consequences. Time to show them what humans can do, when we stop caring about playing it safe. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 20 years studying alien physiology in the name of peaceful cooperation and medical advancement. Her research had led to breakthroughs in treating diseases that affected multiple species. Now, she was using that same knowledge to create diseases that would affect specific alien species while leaving humans untouched. The bioweapons she was developing were elegant in their specificity. Each one was designed to target genetic markers unique to particular alien races. The Zephyrian variant would cause their respiratory systems to dissolve from the inside. The Altarian version would make their neural networks overload and burn out. She had weapons for 17 different species, each one calibrated for maximum suffering. "Doctor, are you certain these agents will not mutate and affect humans?" asked her assistant, Dr. Paul Martinez. Elena looked up from her microscope with a smile that would have terrified the aliens who had called her species weak. "Paul, I have been very careful to ensure that these weapons will only affect their intended targets. Humans will be completely immune. In fact, exposure to these agents will actually strengthen human immune systems against similar attacks. As reports came in from across human space about the Phoenix Protocol activation, one thing became clear to everyone involved. Humanity had been preparing for this war for decades. Every diplomatic failure, every ignored plea for help, every burned human world had been teaching humanity's leaders that peaceful coexistence was impossible. The galaxy had spent years studying humans as if they were laboratory animals. Soon they would learn what happened when the animals decided to study their captors instead. The age of human patience was over, and the age of human vengeance was about to begin. Admiral Korthak of the Zephyrian Collective had destroyed 15 human worlds in his career, and today he planned to make it 16. Kepler Station was humanity's most important military outpost, controlling hyperspace routes to 3 major sectors. Its destruction would cut off human supply lines and leave Earth isolated and vulnerable for the final assault. His fleet of 200 ships moved through hyperspace toward their target with casual confidence. The Zephyrians had been fighting and winning wars for 3,000 years. Humans had barely mastered space travel for a century. This would be another easy victory against an inferior species. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human station," reported his communications officer. "They are asking us to withdraw and respect their territorial boundaries." Korthak laughed, a sound like grinding metal that passed for amusement among his species. Typical human weakness. They still think words can save them. "Tell them we will accept their surrender if they abandon the station within 1 hour. Otherwise, we will destroy it with everyone aboard." The response from Kepler Station came quickly. "Admiral Korthak, this is Commander Tony Rodriguez. We have reviewed your terms and wish to present our counteroffer. Go to hell." The Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system and spread into attack formation. Korthak studied the tactical display and saw exactly what he expected. Kepler Station hung in orbit around a dead planet, defended by perhaps 20 human ships that were already moving to intercept his fleet. The humans would fight bravely and die uselessly, just like they always did. "Begin the attack," Korthak ordered. "Destroy the human ships first, then bombard the station until nothing remains." His ships had barely begun their attack run when space around them erupted in explosions. The 20 human ships had suddenly become 50, then 70, then 100. Vessels materialized out of empty space as if they had been hiding in another dimension entirely. "Admiral, we are detecting massive energy signatures," his tactical officer reported with confusion in his voice. "These ships are not showing on any of our databases. Their technology appears to be far more advanced than previous human capabilities." Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance as his ship led the human fleet into battle. The new cloaking technology had worked perfectly, allowing them to position themselves for a devastating surprise attack. Around him, his crew worked with grim efficiency to coordinate the assault that would change galactic history forever. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast on the Fleet Command channel. "Remember New Montana. Remember every human world they have burned. Today we teach the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. No prisoners, no mercy, no quarter. Send them all to hell." The human fleet attacked with a ferocity that shocked even their own commanders. Ships accelerated to ramming speed and smashed into Zephyrian vessels like kinetic missiles. The humans had removed their safety protocols and were using their ships as weapons, accepting certain death to inflict maximum damage on their enemies. Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez led a boarding party onto a disabled Zephyrian cruiser through a breach torn in its hull by a ramming attack. His Marines wore new combat armor that enhanced their strength and speed while protecting them from the hostile environment of alien ships. More importantly, they carried weapons designed specifically to kill Zephyrians. The Marines moved through the ship like a force of nature, killing everything they encountered. The Zephyrians had never faced humans in close combat before and were unprepared for the savagery of their assault. Human soldiers tore through alien defenses with a brutality that went beyond warfare into something approaching pure hatred. Rodriguez. "To Morrison," Tony reported as his team secured the bridge of the enemy ship. "We have eliminated all resistance aboard the target vessel, beginning data extraction and then scuttling the ship. The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once the humans revealed their true capabilities. The Zephyrian fleet found itself outmaneuvered, outgunned, and completely outmatched by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were reduced to floating debris by weapons that violated every treaty the galaxy had ever signed." Admiral Korthak watched his fleet die around him from the bridge of his flagship. Half his ships had been destroyed in the opening minutes of the battle. The remainder were being systematically hunted down and eliminated by human vessels that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish before his weapons could target them. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer urged as another explosion shook their ship. "We have lost 70% of our fleet. If we do not withdraw now, we will all die here." Korthak stared at the tactical display in disbelief. In 3,000 years of warfare, the Zephyrian collective had never suffered a defeat like this. They had destroyed human worlds at will, confident that humanity was too weak to retaliate effectively. Now he was watching the most powerful Zephyrian fleet in existence being torn apart by the species they had dismissed as inferior animals. "Open a channel to all remaining ships," he ordered. "All units retreat immediately. Emergency jump to hyperspace." But, as his ships tried to escape, they discovered another human innovation. The space around them had been seeded with interdiction mines that prevented hyperspace jumps. The humans had planned this battle carefully, creating a trap that would ensure no Zephyrians survived to warn their homeworld of humanity's transformation. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the battle from her laboratory on Earth, watching as her biological weapons were deployed for the first time in combat. The Zephyrian ships that had been boarded by human Marines were already showing signs of system failures as tailored viruses infected their computer networks and life support systems. "Doctor, the biological agents are performing beyond expectations," reported her assistant as data streamed in from the battle zone. "The Zephyrian immune systems have no defense against the modified pathogens. Mortality rate is approaching 100% among exposed populations." Elena nodded with satisfaction. Years of studying alien biology in the name of peace had given her everything she needed to wage biological warfare with surgical precision. The weapons she had created would ensure that no Zephyrian who encountered them would survive to report humanity's new capabilities to their superiors. The last Zephyrian ship died 4 hours after the first human vessel had decloaked. Admiral. Korthak's flagship had been boarded and captured intact, its crew dead from exposure to human bioweapons. The Admiral himself was found on his bridge, killed not by human weapons but by his own officer who had been driven insane by the realization that their mighty fleet had been completely destroyed by the species they had hunted for sport. Captain. Morrison stood in the captured alien command center and activated the ship's communication system. The message he broadcast would be received by every major government in the galaxy within hours. His words were simple, but carried a weight that would reshape interstellar politics forever. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Forces. The Zephyrian fleet sent to destroy Kepler Station has been eliminated. All ships destroyed, all personnel killed, no survivors. This was not a battle, it was an execution. For 50 years, humanity has endured attacks on our worlds while the galaxy did nothing. That ends today. Any species that attacks humans or human interests will face the same fate as the Zephyrians. We are no longer asking for your respect. We are demanding it. Cross us at your own risk. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to absorb the implications of what had just happened. The species that had been dismissed as weak and primitive had just destroyed the most feared military force in known space without losing a single ship. More disturbing were the reports from the few automated probes that had recorded the battle. The humans had fought with a savagery that went beyond military necessity into something that resembled genocide. On Kepler Station, Commander Tony Rodriguez watched the debris field that had once been a Zephyrian fleet. His station had not suffered a single casualty, while 200 enemy ships had been reduced to scrap metal and floating corpses. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single afternoon, and everyone would soon know that humanity was no longer prey. The age of alien dominance over humanity was over. The age of human dominance over the galaxy had begun. General Mike Patterson stood before a massive holographic display showing the positions of Zephyrian worlds across 3 sectors of space. Each red dot represented a planet that had supported or participated in attacks against human colonies. Today, those dots would begin disappearing from the galactic map forever. Operation Nemesis is now active, Patterson announced to his assembled fleet commanders. We have simultaneous strike forces moving against 17 Zephyrian worlds. This is not a police action or a peacekeeping mission. This is extermination. Every Zephyrian military installation will be destroyed. Every government official will be eliminated. Every ship in their fleet will be reduced to scrap metal. The human fleets had been preparing for this moment since the Phoenix Protocol was activated. Ships equipped with weapons that violated dozens of galactic conventions spread across Zephyrian space like a plague of death. The aliens who had burned human worlds were about to learn what true warfare looked like when conducted by a species, with nothing left to lose. Admiral Lisa Harper commanded the primary assault force moving against Zephyr Prime, the heavily defended homeworld of the Collective. Her fleet of 300 ships represented the largest human military force ever assembled. The ships carried weapons that could sterilize entire continents, and soldiers enhanced far beyond normal human capabilities. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian High Command, reported Commander Susan Lee from her position at the communications station. They are requesting negotiations and offering to discuss terms for a ceasefire. Lisa smiled coldly as she considered the message. For decades, humans had begged for negotiations while Zephyrian fleets burned their worlds. The aliens had always responded with demands for unconditional surrender or threats of total destruction. Now the situation was reversed, and Lisa intended to show them exactly the same mercy they had shown humanity. Send a reply, she ordered. Tell them that negotiations were offered 50 years ago when they started killing humans. They chose violence then, so violence is what they will receive now. The only terms we accept are their complete extinction. The assault on Zephyr Prime began with something the galaxy had never seen before. Instead of orbital bombardment or invasion fleets, the humans deployed atmospheric processors that converted the planet's air into something toxic to Zephyrian biology while remaining perfectly breathable for humans. The aliens found themselves choking to death on their own homeworld's atmosphere within hours of the human arrival. Captain Lisa Rodriguez commanded a stealth frigate that had been modified with experimental technology developed in the deepest Phoenix Protocol facilities. Her ship could become completely invisible to all known detection methods and phase through solid matter like a ghost. Her mission was psychological warfare on a scale that would break the minds of entire species. The Altarian Federation had provided intelligence and logistical support to the Zephyrian attacks on human worlds. They considered themselves too powerful and too distant to face human retaliation directly. Captain Rodriguez was assigned to correct their misconceptions about human capabilities and reach. Her ship materialized inside the Altarian home system without triggering a single sensor. The phase technology allowed her to bypass every defensive system the aliens had constructed over centuries. She positioned her vessel directly above the capital city of their homeworld and began broadcasting the audio recordings her crew had made during the Zephyrian massacre. The screams of dying Zephyrians flooded Altarian communication networks for 6 straight hours. The sounds of their former allies being systematically exterminated filled every screen and speaker on the planet. The broadcast included detailed descriptions of how each Zephyrian had died and promises that the Altarians would suffer the same fate unless they surrendered immediately. The psychological impact was devastating. Within hours, half the Altarian government had committed suicide rather than face the terror that was coming for them. The remainder sent desperate messages to every neutral species they could contact, begging for protection against the humans, who had somehow become the galaxy's most feared predators overnight. On Earth, civilian contractor Janet Moore supervised the construction of massive shipyards that operated around the clock to build humanity's new fleet. The ships being constructed were designed for one purpose: to ensure that no alien species would ever again consider humans an acceptable target for aggression. "Ma'am, the production schedules are exceeding all projections," reported her assistant, Engineer Bob Taylor. "We are building ships faster than any civilization in galactic history. At this rate, we will have the largest fleet in known space within 2 years. Janet nodded as she watched the construction robots work with inhuman precision. The shipyards had been designed using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels and improved with human innovation. Each ship that rolled off the production lines carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Increase production by another 20%, she ordered. "I want every human world defended by enough firepower to reduce any attacking fleet to atoms. Never again will our people watch helplessly while aliens burn our homes." The Galactic Council convened an emergency session as reports of human attacks reached them from across known space. Counselor Prime Vextar, who had dismissed human concerns for decades, now found himself facing representatives of species that were fleeing in terror from human retaliation. "The humans have gone mad," declared Ambassador Zekmoth of the Rocktharian Empire. "They are not conducting military operations. They are committing genocide. Entire Zephyrian colonies have been wiped out down to the last individual. Their biological weapons are specifically designed to cause maximum suffering before death." Ambassador Henry Clark entered the council chambers for the first time in months. As humanity's former representative, he had endured decades of humiliation and dismissal from the very species that were now cowering in fear. His presence silenced the panicked discussions as every alien eye turned toward him. "Honorable counselors," Henry began with mock formality, "humanity has received your request for emergency negotiations regarding our current military operations against hostile alien forces. After careful consideration, we have prepared our, response." He activated a holographic display showing the systematic destruction of Zephyrian forces across the galaxy. The images were brutal and graphic, designed to demonstrate that humans were no longer interested in the restrained warfare that had characterized galactic conflicts for millennia. "For 50 years, this council ignored our pleas for protection while aliens murdered our people," Henry continued. "You told us that we were too weak to matter, too primitive to deserve consideration, too insignificant to defend. Today, humanity demonstrates the consequences of your assumptions." Counselor Vextar rose from his seat with obvious desperation. "Ambassador Clark, surely reasonable beings can find a peaceful solution to this crisis. The Council is prepared to offer humanity full membership status and guaranteed protection from future attacks," Henry laughed, a sound that carried no warmth or humor. "Counselor, you still do not understand the situation. We are not asking for your protection anymore. We are not requesting your membership. We are informing you that the galaxy now operates under human terms. Any species that objects to our new arrangements is welcome to join the Zephyrians in extinction." The council chamber erupted in panicked discussions as representatives realized that humanity was not interested in negotiations or compromise. The species that had been dismissed as inferior animals were now dictating terms to civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Dr. Patricia Newman, head of the newly formed Human Colonial Authority, began implementing the redistribution of galactic territory. Species that had opposed humanity would lose their homeworlds to human colonization. Those that had remained neutral would receive protection under human administration. The few that had aided humanity would be granted limited autonomy as junior partners. "Doctor, we are receiving surrender offers from 47 different species," reported her aide, analyst Mark Williams. "They are offering tribute, territorial concessions, and complete submission to human authority in exchange for protection from our military forces." Patricia studied the offers with the cold calculation of someone who had watched human worlds burn while the galaxy did nothing. "Accept submissions from species that remained neutral during our persecution. Reject all offers from species that supported attacks on human colonies. They will share the Zephyrians' fate." The transformation of the galaxy continued as human fleets systematically eliminated any species that had participated in or supported the attacks on human worlds. What had begun as retaliation for specific atrocities had evolved into a complete restructuring of galactic civilization under human dominance. The age of alien supremacy was ending in fire and blood, replaced by an era where humanity's will would be the only law that mattered among the stars. The siege of Council Prime began with a single transmission broadcast across the galaxy on every communication frequency. Admiral Lisa Harper's voice carried the weight of humanity's accumulated rage as she delivered an ultimatum that would reshape the foundations of galactic civilization. "This is Admiral Harper of the United Earth Forces. Our fleet of 800 ships now surrounds Council Prime, the seat of galactic government. For 60 years, this body has ignored human suffering while aliens murdered our people with impunity. Today, that government ends. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why the galaxy now fears the name of humanity." Council Prime had been the center of galactic power for 3,000 years, protected by defensive systems that were considered impregnable. The massive space station housed the governments of 47 different species and controlled trade, routes that connected every civilized world. Its destruction would leave the galaxy without unified leadership for the first time in recorded history. The human fleet arranged itself in perfect formation around the station, each ship positioned, to prevent any escape while maintaining clear firing lines for maximum destruction. The vessels themselves were technological marvels that pushed the boundaries of known physics, armed with weapons that violated every treaty the galaxy had ever signed. "Admiral, we are receiving communications from every major government in the galaxy," reported Commander Susan Lee from her position on the flagship bridge. "They are all requesting immediate negotiations and offering various forms of tribute or concession in exchange for avoiding a military confrontation." Lisa reviewed the incoming messages with the cold satisfaction of someone who had waited decades for this moment. Representatives who had dismissed human concerns as trivial were now pleading desperately for mercy from the species they had once considered inferior. The irony was not lost on her. "Tell them that the time for negotiations ended when they chose to ignore human genocide," she replied. "Any government that wishes to survive the transition to human rule will surrender immediately and accept whatever terms we choose to impose. Resistance will result in extinction." Colonel Danny Foster led the ground assault force that would capture Council Prime once its defenses were neutralized. His soldiers were enhanced far beyond normal human capabilities, equipped with armor and weapons that made them virtually unstoppable in close combat. More importantly, they carried specific orders to eliminate any alien leader who had participated in the persecution of humanity. "Remember your targets," Danny addressed his troops as they prepared for deployment. "We have detailed files on every alien official who voted against human protection requests or supported attacks on our colonies. Those individuals will not survive this day. Others who cooperated with human interests may be spared if they surrender immediately." The assault began when human ships opened fire on Council Prime's defensive systems. The station's shields, designed to withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets, collapsed within minutes under the sustained bombardment of weapons that drew their power from controlled singularities. Secondary systems failed in cascade failures that left vast sections of the station defenseless. Counselor Prime Vextar watched his government's defenses crumble from the emergency command center deep within the station. The Altarian leader who had once smugly dismissed human concerns now faced the reality that his species was about to be held accountable for their role in human suffering. "Sir, the human fleet has breached the outer hull in 17 locations," reported his aide with barely controlled panic. "Their assault troops are advancing through all major sections. Our security forces are offering no effective resistance." Vextar activated the Council's emergency communications system, broadcasting a desperate plea to any remaining neutral species. "This is Counselor Prime Vextar to all galactic governments. The humans have lost all restraint and sanity. They are conducting a genocidal campaign against any species that oppose them. If they are not stopped immediately, they will eventually turn their weapons against every non-human civilization." The response to his plea came not from fellow aliens, but from Colonel Foster himself, who had traced the transmission to its source. "Counselor Vexitar, this is Colonel Danny Foster of the United Earth Marines. You are under arrest for crimes against humanity, including genocide, conspiracy to commit genocide, and violations of the basic rights of sentient beings. Surrender immediately or be eliminated." The trial of Counselor Vextar was broadcast live across the galaxy, serving as both a demonstration of human justice and a warning to any species considering resistance to human rule. Prosecutor Angela Mitchell presented evidence that had been accumulated over decades of alien persecution, documenting the systematic discrimination and violence that humanity had endured. The defendant stands accused of orchestrating the murder of over 50 million human civilians, Angela stated, as holographic displays showed the burning remains of human worlds. His government provided intelligence, logistics, and political cover for attacks that were designed to terrorize humanity into submission. The evidence will show that these were not random acts of violence, but part of a coordinated campaign to eliminate humans as a galactic power. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Recorded communications showed Vextar personally approving support for Zephyrian attacks on human colonies. Intelligence reports demonstrated that his government had provided targeting information for civilian centers to maximize human casualties. Medical records proved that Altarian scientists had helped develop biological weapons specifically designed to kill humans. The defendant will face execution by the same methods his government helped develop for use against human populations, Angela announced as the trial concluded. This sentence will be carried out publicly to demonstrate that the age of alien impunity for crimes against humanity has ended forever. The execution was witnessed by representatives from every remaining alien government, ensuring that the message would spread throughout the galaxy. Vextar died slowly and painfully. Killed by a modified version of the same biological weapon his scientists had helped create for use against human children. His final words were broadcast across galactic communication networks as a warning to any species that might consider future aggression against humanity. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from captain after his victory at Kepler Station, accepted the formal surrender of the Altarian fleet at their homeworld. The once mighty Federation that had controlled dozens of star systems was reduced to a human protectorate within. A matter of weeks. Your military forces will be disbanded immediately, Morrison announced to the assembled Altarian commanders. Your weapons will be destroyed under human supervision. Your government will be replaced with human administrators who will ensure that your species learns to coexist peacefully with human interests. The Altarian military leaders who had once commanded fleets that terrorized entire sectors now stood with their heads bowed in defeat. Their homeworld's orbital defenses had been reduced to debris, their most advanced warships were floating scrap metal, and their government had been replaced by humans who viewed them as conquered enemies rather than equals. Any resistance to human authority will result in the complete sterilization of your remaining worlds, Morrison continued. Your species will survive only as long as you remain useful to human interests. Cross us again, and you will join the Zephyrians in extinction. Dr. Patricia Newman expanded the human colonial authority to administer the growing number of worlds that had fallen under human control. Former alien colonies were redistributed to human settlers, while alien populations were relocated to designated reservation worlds where they could be monitored and controlled. We are receiving applications for human citizenship from over 2 billion aliens, reported her assistant administrator Jane Cooper. Most are from species that remained neutral during our persecution and are now seeking protection under human law. Patricia reviewed the applications with the practical mindset of someone managing the largest population transfer in galactic history. Aliens who could prove they had opposed attacks on humanity would be granted limited citizenship rights. Those who had remained neutral would be allowed to settle on human worlds as supervised residents. Former enemies would be restricted to reservation worlds where they could pose no threat to human interests. Approve citizenship for species that actively opposed the persecution of humanity, she decided. Grant residency status to neutrals who can demonstrate useful skills. Deny all applications from species that supported attacks on human colonies. They will remain on reservation worlds indefinitely. The galaxy was being transformed into a vast human empire where alien species survived only at human discretion. Worlds that had been independent for millennia now flew human flags and operated under human law. Trade routes that had connected diverse civilizations for thousands of years now served primarily to move resources toward human colonies and military bases. The age of galactic diversity and alien independence was ending as humanity imposed a new order based on the simple principle that human interests would always take precedence over alien concerns. 5 years after the day humanity's patience finally snapped, Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the halls of what had once been the Galactic Council building. The marble corridors that had echoed with the voices of alien politicians for 3 millennia now housed the central command of the human galactic authority. Portraits of long-dead alien leaders had been replaced with memorials honoring the 50 million humans who died before their species decided to fight back. The building itself had been completely transformed to serve humanity's needs. The circular chamber where aliens had once debated policy while ignoring human suffering was now a strategic planning center where human admirals coordinated the defense of an empire that spanned half the galaxy. The architecture remained the same, but the purpose had changed completely. Admiral, we have received the final surrender documents from the hegemony of Kresh, reported Commander Susan Lee as she approached with a data tablet. That makes them the last independent government to accept human authority. The entire galaxy is now under unified human control. Morrison accepted the tablet and reviewed the surrender terms. The Kresh had held out longer than most, believing their remote location and defensive technology would protect them from human retaliation. They learned the truth when a single human ship appeared in their system and demonstrated that their most advanced weapons could not even scratch its shields. Any conditions or demands? Morrison asked as he signed the documents that formally ended the last vestige of alien independence. They request permission to maintain their cultural practices and local government structure, Susan replied. Standard terms for conquered populations who surrender without resistance. Morrison nodded approvingly. The Kresh had been smart enough to surrender before humanity was forced to demonstrate why resistance was futile. They would be granted the same limited autonomy that other cooperative species enjoyed under human rule. Ambassador Henry Clark addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from the same podium where he had once endured decades of dismissal and contempt. The chamber was still full of alien representatives, but now they comprised only 40% of the assembly, while human delegates held the remaining 60%. More importantly, no major decision could be made without human approval. Fellow sentients, Henry began, using the formal address that had replaced the old term beings, which humans found demeaning. Today marks the 5th anniversary of humanity's transition from junior species to galactic authority. In these 5 years, we have eliminated interspecies warfare, standardized trade regulations, and established uniform rights for all populations under human protection. The alien representatives listened in respectful silence. They had learned that interrupting human speakers or showing disrespect could result in their species losing privileges or facing increased restrictions. The casual arrogance that had once characterized galactic politics had been replaced by careful deference to human interests. The galaxy is more peaceful and prosperous than it has been in recorded history, Henry continued. Piracy has been eliminated, territorial disputes have been resolved, and no civilian population has suffered unprovoked attack since humanity assumed responsibility for galactic security. The statistics were undeniable. Under human rule, the galaxy had achieved a level of stability and safety that had been impossible under the old system of competing alien governments. The price of that stability was the complete subordination of all non-human species to human authority, but most aliens had decided that survival under human rule was preferable to extinction through resistance. Dr. Sarah Williams, director of the Human Expansion Project, reviewed the latest colonization reports from her office overlooking the capital city of New Geneva. The former Zephyrian homeworld had been completely terraformed for human habitation, its original atmosphere replaced with breathable air, and its cities rebuilt according to human architectural preferences. We have successfully established human colonies on 437 worlds, her assistant, planning coordinator Mike Roberts, reported during their weekly briefing. Population transfer programs are ahead of schedule, and we expect to have human settlements on every habitable world in the galaxy within the next decade. Sarah nodded as she studied the expansion maps. Humanity's greatest advantage over other species was their incredible adaptability. While most aliens required specific environmental conditions to survive, humans could adapt to almost any world with basic terraforming technology. This biological flexibility had made them the dominant, colonizing force in the galaxy. "What is the status of the reservation worlds?" she asked, referring to the planets where non-cooperative alien species had been relocated after their homeworlds were claimed for human settlement. "All reservation populations are stable and peaceful," Mike replied. "The monitoring systems show no signs of organized resistance or attempts to develop prohibited technologies. Most species have accepted their new status and are focusing on cultural preservation rather than political independence. The reservation system had proven to be an effective method for managing hostile alien populations. Species that had opposed humanity were relocated to carefully selected worlds where they could maintain their cultures while being prevented from developing military capabilities or coordinating resistance activities. They were provided with basic necessities and allowed to govern themselves locally, but remained under constant human surveillance." General Kelly Davis, the former Marine sergeant who had rescued the last survivors of New Montana, now commanded the fortress world that had been built on the site of the destroyed colony. The planet served as both a memorial to the victims of alien aggression and a training ground for the human military forces that maintained order throughout the galaxy. She stood before the memorial wall, a massive structure that listed the names of every human killed in alien attacks during the years of persecution. 3 million names from New Montana alone covered several sections of the wall, but they were joined by millions more from other worlds that had burned while the galaxy ignored human suffering. "General, we have a group of young cadets requesting permission to visit the memorial," reported Colonel Steve Adams, her aide-de-camp. "They want to understand why humanity fought back against the aliens." Kelly nodded and walked toward the group of teenagers who would soon join the military forces that protected human interests across the galaxy. They were the first generation to grow up in a universe where humanity ruled rather than suffered, and their questions reflected their difficulty, understanding why their species had ever tolerated alien persecution. "General Davis, why did humans wait so long to fight back?" asked Cadet Jennifer Martinez, a 16-year-old whose parents had been born on New Montana before its destruction. "If we were strong enough to defeat all the aliens, why did we let them kill our people for so many years?" Kelly looked at the young woman and saw the confusion that came from growing up in an era of human dominance. These children had never experienced the helplessness of watching alien fleets burn human worlds, while galactic authorities did nothing. They could not understand the mindset of a species that had tried desperately to earn acceptance through peaceful cooperation. "We waited because we believed that patience and diplomacy would eventually earn us respect," Kelly explained. "We thought that proving our peaceful intentions would convince other species to treat us as equals. We were wrong. The galaxy interpreted our restraint as weakness and our desire for peace as an invitation to attack us with impunity." She gestured toward the memorial wall and the names of the dead that covered its surface. "These people died because humanity chose mercy over vengeance, negotiation over retaliation, and hope over fear. Their sacrifice taught us that in this universe, only strength earns respect, and only the willingness to use that strength ensures survival." Another cadet, a young man named David Chen, whose grandparents had fled the destroyed colony of Haven 7, asked the question that defined the new galactic order. "General, do you think the aliens will ever try to fight back against human rule?" Kelly smiled grimly as she considered the question. In 5 years of human dominance, no alien species had attempted organized resistance to human authority. The demonstrations of human military capabilities had been so overwhelming that most aliens considered rebellion to be equivalent to suicide. "Some of them think about it," she admitted. "Intelligence reports indicate that certain species still harbor resentment about their loss of independence, but they also remember what happened to the Zephyrians and the Altarians. They understand that resistance would result in their complete extinction." She turned back to the memorial wall and spoke the words that had become humanity's unofficial motto since the war began. "We learned that patience is not weakness, but when pushed too far, humans do not just fight back. We ensure that the threat can never rise again. The galaxy is safer now, not because we are peaceful, but because we are the apex predator, and everyone knows it." The cadets absorbed her words with the solemn understanding of young people who would inherit the responsibility of maintaining human dominance over a galaxy that had once considered their species expendable.